There is no badge in the car world more misunderstood than the Porsche crest. People look at a 718 Boxster and dismiss it as the poor man's 911. They see a Cayenne in the school car park and assume the owner couldn't commit to a real Porsche. And they look at something like the 918 Spyder and assume it's simply a faster, more expensive version of everything beneath it. Every single one of those assumptions is wrong. The truth is that the gap between a $70,000 Boxster and a $2 million 918 has almost nothing to do with how quickly you can reach the motorway. It has everything to do with understanding what Porsche is actually selling you at each rung of the ladder. So these are the 7 levels of Porsche, climbing all the way from the entry-level Boxster to the legendary 918 Spyder. Stick with me to the end, and you'll know exactly which level is genuinely worth your money, which single car is the smartest thing the company builds, and which ones you're really buying for the badge and the bragging rights alone. And I'll warn you now, the answer to that first question is almost never the one people expect. There's a reason Porsche has survived for over 75 years while flashier rivals came and went, and by the end of this, you'll understand it completely. Level 1, the entry sports cars. This is Porsche unlocking the front door and letting enthusiasts inside, and it does it with 2 of the finest handling cars on sale at literally any price, the 718 Boxster and the 718 Cayman. The Boxster is the drop-top convertible, the Cayman is the fixed-roof coupe, and underneath, they share the same mid-engine layout, the same brilliant chassis, and the same basic mission. Take someone out of a hot hatch or a fast saloon and show them for the first time what proper balance actually feels like. Prices start around $73,000 for the base car and climb comfortably past $100,000 once you reach the GTS trims. Now here's where people get it completely wrong. They treat the 718 as a watered-down 911, a consolation prize for those who can't stretch to the real thing. It is nothing of the sort. The engine sits in the middle of the car, right behind your shoulders, and that gives it a purity of balance through corners that the rear-engined 911 has spent 60 years cleverly engineering its way around. On a tight, technical back road, a well-driven Cayman will genuinely embarrass cars that cost 3 times as much. The only real catch at this level is the engine note. The base 718 runs a 2-liter turbocharged flat 4, and while it's quick, it sounds a little flat next to the screaming 6-cylinder cars higher up the range. Porsche heard those complaints loud and clear and brought back a glorious 4-liter naturally aspirated flat 6 for the GTS and the brilliant Cayman GT4. That engine is an all-time great, and there's one more thing you absolutely need to know. This generation of 718 is the very last petrol-powered Boxster and Cayman that Porsche will ever build. The next one is electric, which means every single one you see on the road today is already a piece of history. Level 2. The daily drivers. This is the level the purists love to pretend doesn't exist, and ironically, it's the level that pays for absolutely everything else on this list: the Macan, the Cayenne, and the Panamera. These are the cars that transform Porsche from a small, perpetually nearly bankrupt sports car maker into one of the most profitable car companies on the entire planet. The Macan is the compact SUV, starting around $65,000. The Cayenne is the larger SUV, from roughly $80,000 and climbing well past $200,000 for the monstrous Cayenne Turbo GT. And the Panamera is the 4-door Grand Saloon, starting near $105,000 and soaring far beyond that once you start adding options. Here's the truth the purists really don't want to admit. These are the cars that fund the GT3, the 911, and every limited edition collector piece further up this video. Without the Cayenne, there is simply no modern Porsche. When it first launched back in 2002, enthusiasts were genuinely furious. A Porsche SUV felt like a betrayal of everything the brand stood for. 2 decades on, it's the best-selling thing the company makes, and crucially, it drives like nothing else in its class. A Cayenne Turbo GT will hold its own against proper sports cars on a circuit while carrying a family and a boot full of luggage. The Panamera pulls off the same impossible trick in saloon form with a genuinely usable back seat and a chassis that has no right to work as well as it does in something this large and heavy. But the smart money here is the Macan. It's the most affordable way into the brand, it drives brilliantly for an SUV, and it's by far the one most likely to actually suit your real life. If you need a Porsche that handles the school run, the supermarket, and a deserted back road on a Sunday morning, this is the level that makes the most sense. Just don't tell the purists I told you so. Level 3. The icon. The 911 Carrera. If Porsche only ever made one car, this would be it, and for long stretches of the company's history, this was very nearly the only car that truly mattered. The current 911, known internally as the 992 generation, starts around $122,000 for the base Carrera and climbs to roughly $140,000 for the Carrera S. This is the car that has been making the same stubborn engineering argument since 1963. The engine hangs out behind the rear axle, a layout that every textbook engineer in the world will tell you is fundamentally wrong, and Porsche has spent 6 straight decades patiently proving every one of them wrong anyway. The real magic of the 911 isn't found in any single number on a spec sheet. It's in the way absolutely everything works together as one. The flat-six engine, now a 3-liter twin-turbo making around 473 horsepower in the Carrera S, sits low and far back, giving the car a level of traction out of corners that front-engined rivals can only dream about. The steering genuinely talks to you, the brakes are immense, and unlike nearly every other car that flirts with supercar performance, you can drive a 911 every single day without a second thought. It's comfortable, it's astonishingly reliable. The boot up front actually holds your luggage, and the tiny rear seats will swallow a couple of bags or a small child at a push. This is the Porsche that people save for their entire lives to own, and when they finally get the keys, they immediately understand what all the fuss was about. The badge on the engine cover stops being a brag and quietly becomes the entire point. If you only ever own one Porsche in your life, the 911 Carrera is the one that delivers the complete experience. Everything below it is building towards this car, and everything above it is just a more extreme expression of it. Level 4. The everyday supercar. The 911 Turbo and the Turbo S. This is the precise point where the 911 stops being merely fast and becomes genuinely, properly savage, while somehow remaining just as easy to live with as the Carrera below it. The Turbo starts around $197,000 and the Turbo S pushes well past $230,000. For that money, the Turbo S hands you a 3.5-liter twin-turbocharged flat-six producing 640 horsepower, all-wheel drive is standard, and a 0 to 60 sprint of around 2.5 seconds. Just let that figure sink in for a moment. This is a car you can take to the supermarket with a back seat and a full factory warranty that will out-accelerate exotic hypercars costing 10 times as much. The Turbo has always been the quiet assassin of the entire Porsche range. It doesn't wear the enormous wings or the stripped-out race car cabin of the GT models further up. From a distance, it looks almost understated, but the engineering underneath is absolutely staggering. That clever all-wheel drive system means it deploys every one of its horsepower in any weather, on any surface, with a confidence that genuinely borders on unfair. The people who buy a Turbo aren't buying it to pose at the local Cars and Coffee. They're buying what is, quite simply, the single most usable performance car on the planet. It's the machine for the person who wants outright supercar pace, but flatly refuses to give up the ability to drive it in the rain, in the snow, to the office, every single day without an ounce of drama. If you could only own one genuinely fast car for the rest of your life, and it absolutely had to do everything, the 911 Turbo S would be a very, very difficult choice to argue against. Level 5. The GT department. This is where Porsche stops chasing comfort altogether and starts chasing lap times with a single-minded obsession, and it's where a very particular breed of enthusiast quietly finds religion. The 911 GT3, the even wilder GT3 RS, and the mid-engined Cayman GT4 RS. The GT3 starts around $185,000 and is built around a 4-liter naturally aspirated flat-six that revs all the way to a spine-tingling 9,000 RPM. No turbochargers, no hybrid assistance, no tricks. Just a screaming, high-revving engine lifted almost directly from Porsche's racing program, mounted in a car that wants nothing more in life than to be driven absolutely flat out. The GT3 RS then takes that entire idea and pushes it to an extreme that's almost uncomfortable on a public road. It costs around $245,000, and it's draped in active aerodynamics with a towering rear wing that looks like it was stolen straight off a race car. because functionally, that's exactly what it is. It generates so much downforce that it fundamentally changes how the car behaves at speed. These machines are built by a completely separate division inside Porsche, the legendary GT department, and they're engineered with a focus the rest of the range simply cannot match. What truly separates Level 5 from everything beneath it isn't just the raw speed, it's the purpose. A GT3 demands something real from the driver, it rewards genuine skill, it quietly punishes laziness, and it makes you a noticeably better driver just by owning and driving it properly. The Cayman GT4 RS brings that exact same naturally aspirated, high-revving philosophy to the mid-engined car, and plenty of people who've driven both will quietly admit it might just be the more complete driver's car of the pair. If you care far more about how a car makes you feel through a corner than how it looks parked outside a restaurant, this is unquestionably your level. Level 6, the extreme and the rare. This is where the 911 transforms into something genuinely close to a road-legal race car, and where Porsche starts building machines in such tiny numbers that they appreciate in value the very moment they roll out of the factory gates. Sitting right at the top of the outright performance pile is the 911 GT2 RS. The recipe is brutally simple. Take the turbo's twin turbocharged engine, strip out the all-wheel drive entirely, send every last horsepower to the rear wheels alone, and then pile on every single piece of motorsport technology the company possesses. The result is the most powerful and most ferocious 911 ever built. A car so blisteringly quick and so utterly demanding that it held the production car lap record around the Nürburgring when it launched. This is emphatically not a car for the inexperienced. Then come the collector specials, and this is where things get really interesting. The 911 S/T, built to celebrate 60 years of the 911, took that glorious GT3 RS engine and paired it with a proper manual gearbox in the lightest modern 911 the company makes. It cost around $300,000 and it sold out almost instantly. The Sport Classic, with its beautiful ducktail spoiler and double bubble roof, is a deliberate, loving nod to the air-cooled legends of the 1970s. These cars aren't bought to commute to work, they're bought precisely because they're rare, because they're beautiful, and because they will almost certainly be worth considerably more in 5 years than they are today. What you're really paying for at Level 6 isn't simply performance, it's genuine exclusivity, and the near certainty that you've bought an appreciating asset that happens to have a screaming engine bolted into it. And the real difficulty here isn't affording one of these cars. It's convincing Porsche to actually let you buy one in the first place, because for the rarest models, you need a serious history with the brand before they'll even take your call. Level 7. The Halo hypercars. This is where Porsche stops being a car company at all and becomes something closer to a living museum of what is technically possible, and it's the level the entire brand quietly orbits around. Two cars define it completely: the Carrera GT and the 918 Spyder. The Carrera GT, built between 2004 and 2007, is one of the very last truly analog supercars ever made. At its heart sits a 5.5-liter naturally aspirated V10 engine, derived from an abandoned Le Mans racing project, mounted right behind the driver and sending around 605 horsepower to the rear wheels through a manual gearbox with a tricky carbon clutch. No turbos, no hybrid system. No electronic safety nets there to hold your hand when it all starts to go wrong. It is, to this day, widely regarded as one of the most thrilling and most genuinely demanding cars ever built. It originally cost around $440,000 when new. Today, a good one comfortably sells for well over $1.5 million. And then there's the car this entire video has been quietly building towards from the very first second, the 918 Spyder. Built between 2013 and 2015, it was Porsche's complete answer to a simple but enormous question. What happens when you take a race-derived engine, combine it with a cutting-edge hybrid system, and then absolutely refuse to compromise on anything at all? The answer was a 4.5-liter V8, working alongside two electric motors for a combined 887 horsepower. It set a production car lap record at the Nürburgring. It could rocket to 60 in around 2.5 seconds, and yet, remarkably, it could also slip silently through the center of a city on pure electric power alone. Only 918 were ever built naturally. It originally cost around $845,000, and today, the very best examples trade hands for well over $2 million. The 918 wasn't merely the fastest Porsche of its era. It was the car that pointed the entire industry towards the future, proving once and for all that hybrid technology and outright breathtaking performance were never actually enemies. It is the absolute undisputed peak of everything these 7 levels build towards. So after all of that, where exactly is the sweet spot? Where does your hard-earned money actually buy you the most car? For the vast majority of people, the honest answer sits right in the middle of this list, nowhere near the top. The 718 Cayman at level 1, especially in GTS or GT4 form, genuinely gives you 90% of the thrill of cars costing several times as much. The Macan at level 2 is without question the smartest and most usable Porsche the company makes. And the 911 Carrera at level 3 is the one single car that does absolutely everything brilliantly and remains, after all these decades, the beating heart and soul of the entire brand. Above that point, you are increasingly paying for performance you'll very rarely get to fully use, for exclusivity and for the badge. And none of that is wrong, not for a second, as long as you walk in understanding clearly that that is exactly what you're buying. Because here's what every single level of Porsche genuinely has in common, from the cheapest base Boxster right up to the multi-million-dollar 918. They are all, every last one of them, engineered by people who simply could not help themselves. People who flatly refused to build anything ordinary, even on the many occasions when ordinary would have been far easier and considerably more profitable. That stubborn, beautiful obsession is the real Porsche badge, and it runs right through every car on this list. So, tell me, honestly, which level is your personal sweet spot? Are you a die-hard 718 purist, a loyal 911 traditionalist, or are you holding out and saving for a GT3? Drop your pick down in the comments, because I genuinely want to know where you all land. And here's the thing the algorithm needs me to say, but I promise I actually mean it too. The data tells me the overwhelming majority of you watching right now still aren't subscribed. If you've made it all the way to the end of this, you clearly love these cars every bit as much as I do, so do me a favor and hit that subscribe button so the next breakdown actually finds its way to you. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the very next one.